Hello friends, welcome back to one more video in JSP and Servlet, and in this video we'll learn how we can create a dependent select option in JSP Servlet. So actually a few more days ago there are one student has been commented that to make this video, so you make a video of how to populate one drop-down list based on a previous drop-down list that fetched its value from the database, and example country and state. I already created that project, so now let's check the demo of that project. I'm going back to my Firefox, and here you can see this is our drop-down list dependent select item, and here I have three fields, and you can see our country has two fields, but our state is empty and city is empty. So when we'll select our country, then we can see our state. So when I select the country, then it will appear the state list with that country, and when I select the state, it will show us the city under that state. So that was the concept of the project. And when I select another country, and you can see our drop down list has been resetted and show us the new value. Okay, so now let's go back to our NetBeans ID. So I already created that project, and before starting this project we need few jar files. Let's check out dependencies first. Okay, one more thing is that this one is a Maven project. You can do this in simple JSP project is also okay, and I will show you how you can download those jar files. So first one is we need the JSON file, JSON jar file, and the MySQL connector. And for the front end section I used materializes CSS, and I will show you that link to how to set up materializes CSS. And we need one database and three tables including country, state, and city. So let's check those jar files, how we can get those jar files. So here is the JSON link for our JSON jar file. So here is the Maven dependency. If you use Maven project, you just copy this dependency and paste it to your pom.xml file. Here you can see, just paste it to your pom.xml file. Or if you are using a simple Java project, then you just go this link, and I will give you this link in the description. And from this link you just download this JSON file -2.8.6 jar file. And another one is MySQL connector dependency, and you can download this dependency from the dev.mysql.com, and here select the platform independent and choose one jar file and download it. Okay, and just add those jar file in your project. And in web pages folder we have the basic structure. We have one index.jsp page, and here is the simple design of this project drop down list. And for that I use the materializes CSS and its CDN link. So just go to Google Chrome and just type materializes CSS and use this CDN link. And one more thing, so to use AJAX or jQuery, you must need jQuery CDN. Okay, and that's all about our project structure. And one more thing is the source packages. I have one packages, and under this package I have all my Java classes, objects, and connection variable. So everything is in one package. So for our data we need a database table. So I created one database, and underneath the database I have three tables. One is country, state, and city. So in country I have two columns. So one is country ID and country name. And in state I have three columns: ID, country ID, and the state name. And in the city table I have four columns. One is its own ID, then country ID, state ID, and its own name. And this ID is connected with the country and state using the foreign key. Okay, so you have to do it by yourself in your database. Okay, that's all about our database structure. Now let's check out our Java code first. First of all, we need to create our model class. So we have three tables. So for that three tables, we need three models. So one is our country model. This country model contains two variables. One is ID and another one is name, and it's getters and setters and constructor. You can make the constructor, it's okay. And the state, it's contains three variables. It's ID, country ID, and name, and the getter and setter. So you just create this variable and right click your cursor and insert code, and here you will get getters and setters. I already created this, that's why here is no option for that. And in the city model we have four variables. One is ID, country ID, state ID, and its own name, and the getters and setters. That's all about our model class. Now we need to connect our project with the database. So for that we need a connection class, and this is our database connection class, and it's this connection class is imported from the SQL connection. And here is the one method, get connection, and this connection has a class name. This is the MySQL driver class name, and the driver manager, it passed three parameters. So one is the localhost URL with the database name, your database username, and your database password. And you must use the cache to handle the exception. So that is our database class. After connecting our project with the database, we need to retrieve those data from the database. So for that we need a data object class, a data access object class. So that class name is country state data access object class. So here I have a few variables, is connection variable and the prepared statement, string, query, and result set, because we need those things many more times. So that's why I initialize define those variable globally, and create the constructor for our connection, and then create one method to get all country. So this get all country method will return as a list of country data. So here I use the list, but you can use map, you can use hash map, you can use array list, you can use linked list. It's okay, no problem. So here I use the list, and it's a country type, it will pass the country. So this is our country model, this is our country model, and it's defined as a new array list, empty array list, and then we write our SQL query. So select asterisk from the country. So this query will help us to get all data from the database country table, and then we use the prepared statement to prepare the query, and for result set to execute the query. Then when the data is available, then we set those data to our list. So country.set ID, and then add those information to the list and return that list. And by the similar way, we create one more method to get state by country ID. So when we get all country, we'll retrieve that all country information, and using that country ID, we'll retrieve the state information underneath that country. So it's also the same. It's a list and it's a state model, pass the state model, and it's an empty array list, and in parameter we pass the country ID. Then we write down our query, select asterisk from state where CID equal what. We don't know what is the CID, it's depend on our select, so that's why we use what, and we pass that parameter in prepared statement. So set integer 1 and that country ID. Okay, and then execute the query and get the all information and set that information, add those information to the list and return the list. In the same way, we create one more method is get city by state ID. That means on state ID we will retrieve city information. So and here is the parameter we passed the state ID. So it's same as a list and the city model, and it's one empty array list, and we write down our query, select a string from city where SID equal what, state ID equal what, we don't know the state ID, and using prepared statement we set our state ID and execute that query and get those data from the database and set to our model, and we add that model to our list item and return that list item. So that's all for our get information from the database. Okay, so now we need to fetch those data from our database and show it to our user interface. I mean, in our index.jsp page, we need to show that data in this option field. So for that we'll use the AJAX. We need to send our request to the servlet, and our servlet will get that information from our country DAO and it will return to us. So for that I created a get country state servlet, and in this servlet I received some information and accept those information and created different statement here. First one is our statement is to get country. So for that we'll go back to our index.jsp page, and here is our AJAX query. First query is to get the country list. So here $sign dot AJAX, and here AJAX URL is our servlet, get country state servlet. So that means we are requesting to that servlet, and the method is get method, and our data is we are passing one data is operation is country. So that means this operation for country because we are going to use one servlet for all purpose. I mean get 3 data in one servlet. But if you don't do that, you can use multiple servlet. It's okay, no problem. But I am using one servlet to minimize its code. And we are passing the data operation because we don't need any country data. We are sending all information. We need all country data, so that's why I'm not passing any ID or value here. And on success function it will get that data, and using a for loop will show that data. So let's check this first. Go back to our servlet, and I am facing that operation value. First of all, I create a country state DAO object CSD and new country state DAO and pass the connection parameter and get the connection, and then I faced that operation value string operation and request.get parameter the operation. So it will give us the operation information, that what operation I am going to perform. And using that operation value I will use a if statement to evaluate that operation. You can use switch statements, it's okay, no problem. So if op equals the country, the value we are passing here is country, it's equal to this value, then we will pass this, so we will execute this code. So then I create csd dot get all country, and it's assigned to a list of item, and it's a country list, and then create a new JSON object. So JSON equal to new JSON object, and convert that model class to a JSON object. Okay, then JSON, for that we will use JSON dot to JSON, and then we will pass our list item. Then it will convert our list to a JSON list. So it's a string type, so it will return a country list string, and then we will set the response type as a text by HTML, and response dot get writer dot write and that country list. And in the same way we'll use this state operation. We'll get the ID value, then get the list of item using the csd method get all state by country ID, and then define a JSON object and convert that list to a JSON list, and then write that list. And the city operation is same as previous two operation. We'll fetch the ID from our AJAX query, and then make a list of get the data, get city by state ID, and assign it to a list of item, and then create new JSON object, and then convert that city list to a JSON object, and then write that JSON object. Okay, that's the all code for our servlet. So let's go back to our index page, and then let's comment it down and save it here and refresh this page. And you can see I don't have anything here because we need to initialize the select item on documents load. Okay, you can see our dependent select option item has been shown. So when I select on country, you can see I have nothing, but let's check out our inspect element console, and in console you can see that we get our all country information here in a JSON format. Okay, in a JSON format. Uncomment this value and get that data JSON data and convert to a parse JSON data again, and then we will create a for loop. So $.is, then pass that value object, and function is one is key and one is value. So if you need key, it's okay, but if you don't pass key value, it's also okay, no problem. We just need the value. So just pass the key, and on $sign get the country. So get the select item from here, the country select item. So select item is ID. I think it's outside is raining, so I'm sorry for any outside noise. So the select ID is a country. So select that ID and append option list underneath that select ID. So this is the append option value. Value is value dot ID. So that means it will give us this ID value, and then value dot name will give us this name value. Okay, you got it. So now set this file and refresh it. Then what's happened here? So when I refresh it, so you can see I don't have anything here. Why? Because we initialized that select option before our success query. So that's why it's showing us a empty select list. So when we remove that select option here and initialize that select option after our success query, then we will get all. Then we will see all the data. So let's now refresh it and check what's happened. So now you can see we see our two country here. So here is two country, it's Afghanistan and in one is Albania. So we see our country. Now our query is going on select. When we select on country, then what will happen? We will set up our next query on select. That's the query. It's going here. on select. So basically dot country, so that means this is our country item, this is our country item. So when we select one option or when we will change our option, then what will happen? So on change we will fire this query. So on change, when we select that one country, then we will remove all the option list from the state item and city item. First of all, we will remove all the options and then append one option item is select state. So what does it mean? So we'll select on country. You can see by default is there is option is select state. On select item, we will remove all information and we will append that same information here, because when we will if we don't remove all option element, when we will change our country, it will append the list in after this list, because it will not remove previous list. So I will show you that, so okay, no problem. So that's why I just remove all option, on change, remove all old option and populate new option in the same way. And then we will get the data, the state country ID from the country value. So this is our country ID and get the value. So this country query will give us the country value, this value country ID. So we'll take that ID and fire our next query. So we get that value, country data, and let's check it out here. Console.log, and this is CID, and let me comment this, and now let's refresh our browser and select country, and you can see I'll get that ID. When we change our country, it will change that ID. Okay, so get that value, and so we are getting that country value because in next query we need that value. And then set our data. Our data now is a format is first one is we need operation is state, and we need that country ID. So we start our AJAX query, and our URL is to get country state servlet, and method is get method, and data is our this data. This data contains is one operation, one is ID. So first of all, then it will send that data to our servlet, and we will fetch that operation at first and then the ID. You got that? We fetch the operation at first and then the ID. Let's go here and pass the data, and on success we will see that data. So let's comment it here and refresh it. So on select we'll get that data, and it's give us a JSON format data value dependent on that. So if we change our country, then we'll get the another list of JSON. So on select item we don't have anything here, we are getting that data, and then we convert that data to a JSON format, and then we will use a for each loop and pass the object and function. Then on state, so this is our input field is state. So this input field state, we have the ID, and select that state ID and append the option underneath that state. So select that state and append the option and its value. Its value is ID. So you can see that we see its ID is the state ID and the country ID and the name. So we don't need country ID. So we just need the ID and the name. So that's why we use the value is ID and its name. We append that name. So it should be option. So we have mistake here. Option. So it will append that list, and then we will populate our select item. So now it will show us the all list of state. On click on change country. So okay, now refresh it and change select on country, and it will see us all state. And on change country, it will you can see that when I change the country, it change our state data. So you can see when I click on Albania, then it shows us select state. So it's happening from here. it's happening from here because it's remove previous all options and set that value. But what happen if we don't do this? Let's check it out. Okay, when I click on Afghanistan, and it will show us all list of cities, state of Afghanistan. Okay, and when I change the country, but you can see that it didn't remove the previous country state list. So it's just append the list, because we said that just append the list, we didn't remove that list. So that's why we need this query. When we will change our country, it will remove previous selections and set new selections. That's why we need this option. And then we use the same method. To get the city list. So you can use onState.change, and that means when we will change our state. So basically when we select country, and when we change our state or select our state, it will give us the city list. So when I click on Beirut, you can see it's give us the city list. So on change state. So that's the query is going to fire. On change, we will remove all city from that city option, select option, and then we will append new information there. So then get in the same way we will get that value, state value on change. So these are state value we set here. We will get that value, and then we pass the data as a city, and operation is city, and ID is SID. So we'll pass this data to our servlet. So URL is get servlet, and method is get data, and data is data. When we'll get the data from the servlet, we'll check that data. We are getting the data as a JSON format, and parse that JSON data, and use a for each loop to set that data underneath the select option, city select option. So get that city select option, and dot append query and option value. That's value is ID and value is name. So you can see that this is ID and it's a name. We don't need the country ID. We don't need the state ID. If we need the country ID and state ID, we can use that information. Is okay, no problem. So that's we'll append that one option item, change it, and then initialize that form select. And if there is no data, we will just append is city is unavailable. There is, you can see the it should be state is unavailable, and here is country is unavailable. So that's all for our AJAX query, and here is the get servlet. We'll get the operation, and this operation is matched to city. Then it will get that ID, and then csd.get city by, and we'll pass that ID, and then it will store it a list item, and then create a JSON object and convert that model to a JSON model, and then its return string type, and then just a response.get write that as a country list. Okay, so now let's go back here and see what's happened. So when we click on country, then it will give us the state, and it will give us the city list. So when I select on city, you can see. So when I on click change, then it will when I on click change that state item, then it will reset that city item here. So you can see that it's resetted our city items, and then it will show us nothing. You can see that it shows nothing. And when I click another state, it says to city underneath that state. Its country, this name is Burel, and is fish copy. So I'm sorry for this pronunciation. And when I change Afghanistan, then it will reset that all input field and select state and select city. So that's all for this tutorial, and I hope you understand this tutorial. And if you don't understand anything, just comment below. And one more request you to, if you think this video is helpful, so thumbs up this video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe on my channel. So see you in next video.